Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Motor One US channel, where today we are watching the live stream debut, the 2022 Audi E-Tron Gt. So you're not going to have to switch over to a different stream. We're going to have the full debut event for you right here. But before that happens in just a couple minutes, let's talk a little bit. Let's set the table and talk about the car and what it's going to do as it enters a rapidly growing EV landscape. I have two guests joining me today. We have our global editor-in-chief from Motor1.com, John Neff. How are you doing, Mr. Neff?
Hey, Clint. Very well. How are you?
Good, thanks. And then we have our Inside EVs contributor and all-around EV expert, Tom Mccartney, is here as well. Tom, thank you for joining.
Thanks for having me on. This should be fun.
So this, it's a bit of an oddball, but it's a car we've now become familiar with because Audi has done all but tell us every single thing about it. And today that puzzle piece fits in. It debuted the concept form 2 years ago at the LA Auto Show. And since then, they've integrated it into movies. They've done all sorts of things to just tell us, hey, this car is coming. Today, we finally get to know most things, if not all things about it. As they start this live stream. So Tom, let me start with you a little bit. Tell us where this Audi E-Tron GT is going to fit into the EV landscape.
So, you know, one thing that I really love about it is it's going to share a lot of attributes with the Porsche Taycan. And I love the Porsche Taycan. I've driven every version of it so far, and it's absolutely a fantastic electric vehicle. It's not just that it's a Porsche, so you expect it to drive well, which it does. It drives like a Porsche. The Porsche did a really good job engineering this vehicle to be a great electric vehicle, and I expect that to hold true with the Audi also GT. Also, it's I'm talking about things that make EVs great EVs, like charging, for instance. The Porsche Taycan has one of the best or the best charging curves of any electric vehicle, and it holds. A lot of people talk about EVs and they talk about what's the maximum charging rate. That's just one piece of the puzzle, because many of the EVs, they hit that maximum charging rate for like 5 minutes and then it drops off. But the Taycan holds it really long, and the GT will do that also. So on a long road trip, you'll be able to road trip with this vehicle and only have to stop for 25, 30 minutes and get like 80% charged, and then be on your way for another 200 miles or so. So I'm really looking forward to Audi's interpretation of the Porsche Taycan, which is really how I view this vehicle.
So if you're just joining us right now, in just a matter of minutes, Audi will be starting its live stream debut of the E-Tron GT. You do not have to switch to a screen. We're going to play it for you right here. John, tell us about this car. Obviously, it's going to be a high-performance EV. Tom already mentioned the Taycan, which this car is a first cousin to, and it shares a lot of componentry with. But this high-performance EV space seems to be getting all the attention lately. Why is that the case?
Well, I think because very fast things do get a lot of attention, and these automakers want to hit the market with EVs and make a splash. You know, we've seen in the past, let's take the Chevy Bolt, for example. It's not fast, it's not exciting. And while it sells decently well, it never really hit a chord with the market where it gained sales like the Tesla Model 3 did. So I think that's why Audi really wants to get into this space and is piggybacking off of the Porsche Taycan to do it. Now, Audi also has the regular e-tron and the e-tron Sportback, which are, you know, crossovers and a little bit more mainstream. And I see someone in the comments said, you know, I've heard e-trons have issues with charging. The only issues I've heard with charging and any problems that Audis have is with the unlocking the charge cable from the charge port. And I think they've got that fixed now. That was kind of an early production run issue they had. So I don't expect that with the Audi e-tron GT. But yeah, I mean, look, we saw this 2 years ago as a concept. It is gorgeous.
So yeah, we're not spoiling anything right now. This is not the production car. This is the concept car that we saw just a few years ago. And since then, Audi, they even let some members of the media drive it. I think we might have been able to drive a prototype at the time. But yeah, it's just been a slow leak over time of what information we have. And then today, hopefully they fill in the complete picture with specs and everything that the car is able to do. From a looks perspective, I imagine the production car is going to be pretty darn close to what we're seeing on the screen right now. what do you think about that? Because Audi's obviously one of their primary goals is they have to look great.
I mean, I always love when an automaker keeps a concept as close as possible to what it originally was when it moves to production. I applaud that. I hate it when production vehicles look nothing like the concepts they're based on. So considering that the E-Tron concept was absolutely gorgeous, it's going to be a good thing if it ends up looking exactly like that. And we've got the Taycan. We know the basic shape of it that the E-Tron is probably going to share. So yeah, I'm not concerned at all that this thing is going to be a gorgeous looking car.
I'm not saying that the E-Tron SUVs look all that great. I think that the crossover coupe version looked better than the standard E-Tron, but I do anticipate this car looking a lot more aggressive than both of those two. Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, what I was saying was, well, I was at the unveiling back 2 years ago at the LA Auto Show, and I talked to quite a bit of the Audi reps there, and they did work on this in conjunction with the Porsche Taycan team. From what I understand, every 2 or 3 months, the Audi GT, E-Tron GT team and a team of Taycan engineers got together. So there was a lot of sharing of information across these two vehicles. And at the time, I think they told me that the only exterior component that would be exactly the same as the Taycan was the windshield.
Oh,
Everything else is unique to this car. Now, obviously, you're going to see the general shape is going to be, very similar, but they're going to be two unique vehicles.
Very important screenshot here is Iron Man getting out of the GT as well as part of the marketing rollout for the car.
Yeah, which has been a pretty impressive and long marketing rollout. And that is one of the best product placements in a movie ever. I wanted to say, I think the big question that we want answered with the debut today is, where does the E-Tron GT fit with the Porsche Taycan? I think we're all less interested in where it fits overall in the segment, but you've got two vehicles that are probably going to share a lot of mechanical components. So, and Porsche being Porsche, the Taycan is probably going to be faster or more powerful or just be the apex in whatever metric you're looking at. So where does that leave the E-Tron GT? How fast can it be with the Taycan there? I think where it's going to set itself apart more is in value than in performance. Since they can't really have the Audi beat the Porsche in performance, I think they're going to make a case where you can get the Audi for less money but with similar specs, and it's still an Audi, so it's going to be amazing.
On paper, I think Audi would argue with you and say there's nothing stopping them from making it as fast as the Porsche equivalent. We sort of infer as media that sometimes that doesn't happen and that Porsche kind of gets the final say in that, but that's not necessarily true.
Right. I say value in a relative way, because these are still going to be cars that are, 70, 80, 90, $100,000. So they're not aiming for the meat of the market like the Model 3 or the Bolt or cars like those. But look at the Volkswagen Group altogether. They have made such a huge commitment to EVs. And when the Porsche Taycan launched, I think we were all super impressed with the specs. And this is going to be another branch of that development. And I can't wait to see it. Like I said, it's been such a long time in the making, since the debut of the concept, and then all of this marketing, all of this teasing. This is going to be, I think, a really special vehicle. Tom, what do you think about range? Do you think that Audi is going to end up with the same kind of underestimated range with like the EPA rating that the Taycan did?
I do. And I think it would kind of be hard for them to stray far from what the Taycan came in at, because it's the same battery, basically the same aerodynamics, might be a little different aerodynamics. So same, 2-speed transmission. So it would be really hard for them to say, oh, this car goes 240 miles per charge, but here's the same thing. It just looks different and it goes 203 miles per charge. So I assume that they're going to kind of under promise and over deliver like Porsche did with the Taycan, John. And the one thing that I want to swing back a little bit to is, John, you mentioned that you think that this could be more of a value play. I don't know how that ends up happening with the new Taycan that's coming out. That's $79,000.
That's true.
This can't be less than that. So, you know, I think that's going to be the value play. I think this is going to be the luxury play. You're going to get almost as good performance, much more plush, luxurious interior. That's where this is going to fit in.
If you're just joining us now, we will be switching over in just a few minutes as it starts the live stream debut of the 2022 Audi E-Tron GT. John, sorry to cut you off there.
No, that's okay. I was just going to say, since the Taycan has debuted, you know, we're now up to 4 different versions of it, right? And so this is just the first version or 2 of the E-Tron, and I'm sure they'll come out with more versions as well, just like Porsche did. Oh,
looks like we have a countdown. That's quite the trippy countdown. Audi loves this live stream stuff. They're good at it too.
I know. Man, it's 50 seconds. That's like...
I think we need to be in charge of their live streams going forward so we can really nail down this timing. But
we can do our own product placement, not...
yeah, if Marvel or anybody else feels like getting us on board. But,
or caffeine-free Diet Pepsi.
From what I've been told, the presentation will be... probably more than the usual, just a few minutes since these live stream debuts have taken over, but this should be exciting. They're going to fill in the rest of the details and we'll see the production car for the first time. So why don't I mute us 3 and then we'll talk for a few minutes after the car debuts as well. But here it is, the 2022 Audi E-Tron GT.
And as progress is at the heart of everything we do, it's time to celebrate the next milestone, the next icon, the Audi E-Tron GT. I've spent more than 30 years in the car industry, and I'm convinced that the car we are revealing tonight will excite the world. But first, let me introduce our board member responsible for sales and marketing. Welcome, Hildegard Wortmann. Hildegard.
Wow, thank you very much, Marcus. That looks marvelous here. Thank you and good evening, everybody out there in the world. I'm really happy to welcome you to the celebration of progress. At Audi, we are living progress, and we love to create things that the world hasn't seen or heard of. Fortunately, there are lots of people out there who share our mindset, and we've invited them to celebrate with us. Tonight, I'm really pleased to announce a woman who rewrote the rules in her genre. She's an actress, she's a songwriter, and she is a marvelous singer, who just like us at Audi is living progress by continuously setting new standards. We are happy to have her with us here tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Janelle Monae.
Tonight we celebrate. I'm Janelle Monae live from the future. Woo! Are y'all ready to party? No. Some people talk about you like they know all about you. When you get down, they doubt you. And when you tipping on the sing, yeah, they talking about it. Cause they can't tip on the sing what you talk about it. Cause baby, whether I'm high or low, baby, whether I'm high or low, I got to tip on the tightrope.
Progress is to do something different, to come up with something nobody else did before.
You do something that really fascinates you and you are never tired of it.
Now let me see you do the tightrope.
Most attractive Audi ever.
See, we not walking on it, or trying to run around it. This ain't no acrobatic. You either follow or you lead. Yeah, I'm talking.
Future is an attitude. Everything we do today is for a better tomorrow.
I got to keep my balance and just keep dancing on it.
Today, we are more than ever also game changers.
Like a star on the screen, watch me tip all on it. Baby,
you take the technologies of tomorrow and you combine that with creativity from today. I think that there's magic to be had.
Baby, whether I'm high or low.
Passion
Baby, whether I'm high or low.
and action creates progress. Only those who can embrace the future can create it.
I said you can't get too high. I said you can't get too low. Ha, 'cause you get too high. Ooh, you surely be low now.
For me, teamwork is very important. It's a key to success.
E-Tron GT is one for our time.
Yeah. I think electric mobility is the future, for sure.
Electric cars are the way to a more sustainable mobility.
I think everyone's ready for electric mobility.
The E-Tron GT is the true embodiment of our Audi DNA.
Wow, Markus, what a performance of Janelle Monae, huh? Ladies and gentlemen, as we are having so many like-minded people who are living progress with us tonight, I think we can use some professional support here on stage, Markus, for our celebration of progress. A lot of people know him anyway, and he has guided viewers through so many shows in the past. Please welcome with me and say hello to Stephen Getjen. Stephen, good evening.
Thank you very much for having me. Good evening. What an amazing stage. Thank you, Hildegard. Good evening, Markus. Ladies and gentlemen, I too would like to welcome you to the celebration of progress. So welcome. And Markus, I have to admit it, please do not get mad at me. I've been eavesdropping backstage because this is so exciting. And I heard that this day is very special to you.
Yeah, that's right. I've spent my whole career in the automotive industry, and I still get excited about the possibilities technology holds. For example, with a new architecture, new electric drivetrains, charging within minutes, and certainly connectivity. And what also excites me is the spirit at our Audi team. I'm surrounded by people eager to create a new form of mobility, and the audience will see one very good example tonight.
True words. And we are very excited about what will happen tonight. And Hildegard, that brings me to you, because as far as I realized, you have also learned a thing or two about creating and building suspense. So honest to your heart, tell us. I mean, this is not only about launching a new car. I mean, this is bigger. It's about creating and launching a new era for Audi.
Yeah, that's true, Stephen. I think it's fair to say it is a very special moment for all of us, for all the Audianas here tonight. And as the changes go ahead, I think you clearly see for Audi, future is an attitude. It's the mindset of the people at Audi. You know, we call ourselves the Audiana, and we are all aware that the future isn't something that just happens, you know. The future is something we have to create. We have to create it, and right now.
Yeah, true. Our electrification roadmap is clear-cut. We will introduce more than 30 electric models until 2025, and 20 of them fully electric. So in April, we will present our first electric car in the compact segment. So this will be another highlight of this year.
That's true. And I think, Markus, we can say Audi wants to be the driver of change and not be driven by it. At Audi, we are living progress, which is the DNA of our brand. And it is reflected clearly in our mindset. But you know what? There is no better man to tell you about how we bring that mindset across than Henrik Wenders, who leads the Audi brand globally.
Thank you, Hildegard. Gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, at Audi, we are living progress. To us, tomorrow isn't something we wait for. Instead, we are inventing it day in, day out, so we can change it for the better. At this celebration of progress, we are bringing together like-minded people who do not stop to inspire and innovate. They're all passionate about shaping the future, just like us.
Well, talking about passion, building a better tomorrow is not something that we can just dream about. It needs to be created, and it needs to be created right now. And that brand communication accordingly has to be future-oriented, as we sometimes shape the future already here and today.
Yeah, especially in the car industry, with our development cycle, we have to create cars which enter the market in 5 years. So you always have to anticipate the future and think ahead.
And exactly this future orientation is the key element of our brand communication with the hashtag Future is an Attitude, which brings Audi's mindset into the world, from America, across Europe, over to Asia. And the e-Tron GT, of course, is the next element of the campaign, in which it's going to be presented by 3 like-minded protagonists who are making films and fashion never seen before, and music never heard before, just as we create cars never experienced before. Ladies and gentlemen, let's meet them.
And action and noble intention creates progress. Passion creates progress.
Sustainability and high fashion make perfect sense when they work together. It's just mind-blowing to work on material that is grown in a laboratory, and then to see how we can design and how we can make that into something that translates into fashion.
Being a part of the LGBTQI+ community is a great honor. Progress isn't either or. You guys may or may not know this, but I am an android. And androids love electric cars. What's your story of progress?
Ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure to have a like-minded man with us tonight, and we're really happy he found the time. It's a pity, though, he can't be with us, but still, I'm very happy to have him on the screen. Welcome with me, Tom Hardy in London.
Hello, everyone. I'm so sorry. I wish I could be there in person tonight, but it is an honor and a privilege to be part of the show.
Thanks for joining us virtually tonight, Tom. I know about you and Audi. Could you share the story with the audience, please? I love it so much.
Yeah, I go back with Audi a good 12, 13 years. I just started out my career, and I was expecting my first child. And a lovely lady called Tonya Melli, who works for Audi, she found out that I couldn't drive. So she offered very kindly, on behalf of Audi, to teach me to drive, and they taught me to drive. And I was able to, I was able to drive to the hospital to witness the birth of my first child.
I love it. Thank you, Tom. As you know, our latest campaign is all about living progress, and future is an attitude. What's your take on it?
Well, certainly you could say that I'm a regular in the future to a degree, given my role in Inception, a movie that when I read it, I didn't quite understand it. And then, if I'm honest, I still don't understand it. However, when I read the script, I knew that Chris Nolan had created something incredibly special, in the same way that I know that what we're about to present tonight is equally special.
Tom, we are just seconds away from a new era of Audi. Would you please do us the honor?
Of course. Ladies and gentlemen, we proudly present the new fully electric Audi E-Tron GT.
We're celebrating the Audi E-Tron Gt. Woo! Ooh, just shock it, shake it, baby. Electric lady, you're a star. You are my star. You're kinda classic, kinda crazy. Ha. But you know just who you are. You got the looks the gods agree they wanna see. All the birds and the bees dancing with the freaks in the trees, and watch the water turn the wine out of space and out your mind. Ooh, shock it one good time. Electric lady, get away now. 'Cause tonight we gon' do what we want to. Lady, get away down. Electric lady, lady, I said lady. Electric lady, electric lady. Oh, electric lady, just shock me, baby. Electric lady, just shock me, baby. Electric lady, electric lady, just shock me, baby. Woo! Ooh, shock it, break it, baby. Electric lady, electric lady. Ooh, shock it. We're celebrating sustainability. Just think, if everybody did their part to keep our air clean. Woo! The electric lady, electric lady, get way down. 'Cause tonight we gon' do what we want to. Lady, get way down. Hey. Electric lady.
Woo! What a beauty! What an entrance! Janelle Monae, Hildegard, Marcus, congratulations. Wow.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Audi E-Tron GT. This is where passion, courage, and curiosity come together and progress emerges. The car symbolizes the Audi DNA and the ambition to shape the future of premium mobility. Looking at it, you can see, or I should say, you can feel that this car perfectly embodies Audi's innovative and pioneering spirit. Stephen, you know what? I think this is a clear trailblazer that allows Audi to rethink technology. For me, the car is the most sophisticated take on intelligent performance. Marcus, what do you think?
Well, the e-tron GT is the first battery electric model from Audi with a flat floor architecture. It shows what intelligent performance, emotional design, and sustainability mean to us. And brings Vorkommen durch Technik to the road with 100% electric, quattro drive, top vectoring, and four-wheel steering.
Can I touch it? Can I
Careful,
feel it?
careful.
Can I drive it?
No.
Okay, let's
Maybe
talk about
later.
that later. Let's discuss that later. There's so many different questions popping up in my head. So I'm just going to fire away. Hildegard and Marcus. First of all, how does all of that, what we can see and what you just said, translate into numbers? And very importantly, what about the acceleration?
Well, Steve, a lot of questions, but I'm standing next to the Audi RS E-Tron GT, the high-performance model. And this car brings Vorsprung durch Technik to the road. You ask about electrical range? From 433 up to 472 kilometers, according to WLTP. That should take you quite a while. Top speed, 250 kilometers per hour. It's the most powerful Audi ever built. But you ask for acceleration? Ready to take this? From 0 to 100, 3.3 seconds. But equally important for electric cars is the charging time. So charging time up to 80% capacity with up to 700 kilowatt at an 800 volt charging station, less than 23 minutes. You better rush with your coffee break.
These are really impressive numbers. And I have to say that the e-tron GT has fascinated me since my very first day at Audi. And I'm very happy that I was able to contribute to the car in terms of suspension and handling as we approach the finish line.
Hildegard, there's still one more question, not only important to me, but probably most people out there. What makes the e-tron GT sustainable?
Yeah, I think, Stephen, clearly the electric drive of the Audi E-Tron GT is the perfect combination of powerful performance and high efficiency. And it comes from a plant that is CO2 neutral production on balance already today. But also there are recycled materials in the interior, like the seat fabric, and that is another proof of our sustainability approach in here. But Stephen, I just love the design.
And I do too. And design is my cue, so thank you. The Audi rhyme. Ladies and gentlemen, I have the pleasure to introduce you to the man behind the design of the e-tron GT. He has designed more than 100 cars and invented a new Audi design language along the way. When he's not spending time in designing and creating new cars, he loves to sail and win the prestigious sailing race Kieler Woche. And I've heard that every time he enters the design studio, he puts the clock forward 4 years. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, Marc Lichte.
Hi, Markus.
Hey, Marc.
Hello, Hildegard.
Hi.
Hey, Marc.
Hi, Stephen.
Congratulations. It's fantastic to have you on the show. I mean, this is your baby. And I have one simple and straightforward question. Could you sum up the experience of giving birth to the e-tron GT in one single sentence?
Yes, I can, but Stephen, before I have to tell you one thing.
Okay.
Ever since I was a young boy, I have been dreaming to become a car designer. And many years later, the dream came true. And today I'm working for more than 20 years as a professional designer. And with my team, we designed many very attractive, some iconic cars, for example, the Audi S7. But to answer your question, to sum up, the Beauty here is by far the most attractive car I've ever drawn.
But I know it's not the last beautiful car he has designed, so more to come, actually.
You are right.
A very proud father. Marc and I love it too. I heard that the e-tron GT is not only just another new design car, but the icon of a new era. Could you tell us why, especially and what it meant for you to design it and create it?
Now you have to know that the e-tron GT is the first battery electric vehicle based on a low-floor platform. And because of this, you have to know that aerodynamics are very important for an EV because you can extend the range. And that's why we came up with a complete new design process. Before we did the first sketch, we went with the whole team for many weeks to the wind tunnel. And during this time, we create the volume and the shape of the car. And by this, we came up with some really sophisticated aerodynamic ideas, like the flush single frame, like this air curtain here, like the flush rocker, and my favorite detail, like this super fast, almost streamline shaped roofline. And and all these features together are the reason why we left the wind tunnel with a very low drag coefficient of 0.2. And that's the reason why we could increase the range by many, many miles.
But that's not all.
That's not all. No, talking about design. Stephen, you have to know that the basis for good design are proportions. And these proportions are simply awesome. But the proportions are defined by the package. And on this package, I have to say, is a technical masterpiece. there's a huge battery pack located in the floor, 95 kilowatt. It's very big. It is a real four-seater, and the result is that the overall height is 2 inches less than an S7. And the reason is that the engineers came up with a battery pack which has different height levels. And that's the reason why even a tall guy like me is able to have enough head clearance in the second row. And that's why this car it's a new or modern or very progressive interpretation of a classical GT. That means proportions like a super sports car and the usability of a real four-seater. And that's something completely new. And talking about details, please have a look to this super progressive daytime running lights. That is the next step in our light technology. This X, which visualizes laser light technology. The taillights are matching perfectly to the headlights, the precise LED band, which are running in these vertical elements. And this creates a unique and progressive expression. And, Stephen, my favorite detail, have a look to this muzzle. That's the widest muzzle we ever designed at Audi. And to sum it up, the E-Tron Gt embodies in perfection the next level of Audi's design language.
Mark, it's so great to listen to people who are so passionate and loving of their work. And once again, congratulations. And thank you very much for taking us behind the scenes and giving us an inside look on how you and your team have achieved and designed this amazing car. It's beautiful. And Mark, I guess, now it's back to the future for you. So have fun, enjoy, and once again, congratulations.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
And now, another highlight. Ladies and gentlemen, I've got the pleasure to introduce a true Italian. As the head interior designer at Audi, she takes care of the things you can touch and feel, and the ones you can't.
Colors are around us, everywhere, in every moment. You just breathe it in. Be open to every kind of input. I am Simona Falcinella. I'm Italian, and I'm the responsible of the color and trim department in Audi design. Every material has a different dimension. We're talking about the invisible or even the difficult to express. And how we touch is very important to bring to our client or in our product a readable material. In the E-Tron Gt, we are very proud to propose some option leather-free. In this case, for example, for this textile, we use a big percentage of sustainable fiber. And the big work we did is really to have a wool effect, a tailor-made men typical textile. No? When you enter in your car, every morning you sleep inside. No? So you have a very subtle sound, and you recognize this sound is your car. And it's still sporty and it's still perfect, so great. The gloss of the material is something that we work a lot. Never too shiny, never too matte. And I think the effect is Audi, totally essence Audi. I think that is really the subtle design that is touching the person, the perception. And the closer you get to the final product, this total creativity and freedom become technology. The strength of the color and trim department is really the teamwork. So we mix these three so that we can talk hours about a shade of a color. We work separately, each one on his own, on the very expertise of the material. And then we get together and everything fits, everything works. It's kind of magic. As designers, we have the privilege, but even the responsibility to really direct our project since the first step towards a preservation of our planet. I am Simona Falcinella, and I'm dressing cars, let's say.
Ladies and gentlemen, she is a trailblazer in sustainable fashion, and a Vogue Fashion Designer of the Year. Please join me in welcoming Stella Mccartney from the UK. Stella, it's great to have you with us here tonight.
Hi, Hildegard. Hi, Mark. Thank you guys so much for having me. I'm really excited to be with you guys today.
And we are really excited. Stella, both your company and Audi are global players. And what we do has, I would say, a global impact. At Audi, we believe that future is an attitude. We just don't want to wait for the future. We're developing, designing, and building it today. And I know that's driving you as well.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. I think there's so many similarities between the way that you guys work at Audi and everything I do at Stella McCartney. It's really a brand for tomorrow here as well. You know, every single approach that we take in designing luxurious and desirable clothing for women means that we have to ask ourselves questions about how we get there. What is the technology? How are we manufacturing? How are we distributing product in a more sustainable way? And I think that those two kind of problems together become really exciting, actually. I love that way of working. And, you know, we're always problem solving at Stella. We're always thinking out of the box and trying to collide those two worlds to make magic.
I think that sustainability is really the new premium, and the new e-Tron GT goes and shows exactly that. And I hear that maybe we are using the same materials. Is that right, Stella?
Yeah, you know, I agree too. People ask me all the time what my idea of luxury is, and I really believe nature and time on this planet and respecting all of its creatures is probably the biggest luxury, other than sleep, that you can get these days. But yeah, we are actually using similar materials, which I find so exciting. And, you know, one of which is Econil, and it's an incredible, incredible material using waste and actually breaking it down in a non-chemical way, and then allowing us to use those new fibers and to recycle the product into a new garment here at Stella. It's a wonderful, wonderful fabric to work with. I was so excited when I heard that we were both using that.
Stella, we are using exactly the same fabric for our seats and the carpets. And the reason is that my team has been looking at the whole range of materials. And I have to say, Econil really stood out. And not just because it's sustainable, but because of the very nice haptic qualities.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the garments in the room today that you see are using Econil, and it's wonderful. There's so many different ways in which you can use it. We used it actually recently in some of our Stella wear, which is a new product that we've made that can be worn as swimwear or underwear, and it's kind of body shaping, and it's also tested for chlorine, and it's completely incredible. It basically it's woven, so it's really 99% zero waste. So that's super exciting way to work as well. And there are so many more new technologies coming up that we also use that can really answer some of the issues that we face.
Stella, when we do these sort of things, do you feel sometimes that
All right, let's cut back in here. And
yeah, they weren't talking about anything important, I think.
So let me work to get some images of the car back on the screen. If you're just joining us right now, Audi just took the cover off the 2022 e-Tron GT. The comments are already talking about Taycan comparisons, Tesla comparisons, Lucid. So let's get into that. Let me work on getting some images on. John, let's start with you. Tell me a little bit about what you just saw and your initial thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, they did succeed at largely carrying over the concept's design to production, although someone noted that it no longer has flush door handles, which I agree is disappointing considering that would have been an aid to aerodynamics, which is very important to electric vehicles. So I'm not sure why they didn't keep that particular part. But overall, it looks fantastic, I think. And I say that not being a huge fan of current Audi design, which I feel has become a little boring and stale after so many evolutions on the same thing. But yeah, I mean, design-wise, great. Compared to the Taycan, I think a lot of people are zeroing in on the fact that, you know, why would you buy this when you could buy a Taycan? And I look at the crossover mark as $100,000, because at $100,000 you can get an e-tron GT with the large battery pack, or you can get a Taycan with a small battery pack. And that would be an easy question for me to answer. I would get the one with the larger battery pack. So I think that's where the value of the Audi comes in. And then I think, like Tom said, once we get to drive the e-tron, we'll get to see what its character is, what its personality is, and figure out, is this the kind of luxury to the Taycan's performance?
Tom, tell me a little bit about the specs that Audi just unveiled for us.
Yeah, well, nothing really surprised me. You know, I don't know what the general public was looking at, but because this was so similar to the Taycan, I was expecting similar specs, and that's what we got. It's slightly less powerful than the Taycan. We were speculating that even the top version wouldn't be as fast as a Taycan, have slightly less power. From what I can see with these specs, that's correct. I think the RS GT has 590 horsepower, and with launch control and overboost, it pushes it up to 637 horsepower just for that 2.5 seconds that the overboost goes on. And the Taycan has 616 horsepower with 751 horsepower during the overboost, and that's the Taycan Turbo S. So, you know, as we kind of figured, Audi was not going to be able to have a car that would beat the Taycan in a race, but we're talking fractions of a second here. The average person would not notice the difference at all. This is a real track monster, in my opinion. This car, besides being luxury, is going to be brutally fast. Now, they mentioned the 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in 3.3 seconds. That goes down to 3.1 seconds when you do 0 to 60. The 0 to 100 kilometers an hour is 0 to 62. So it shaves a little bit off. So we're really looking at like 3 seconds, which is actually faster than the fastest Audi currently is the R8. I think that goes 0 to 60 in 3.3 or 3.4.
Yeah.
So, you know, this thing's a beast, and I love it. But, you know, I kind of tipped my hat earlier because I've driven the Taycan so much, and I love the Taycan. This is like a luxurious version, an executive version of the Taycan, and I do think that where it fits in price-wise works. As John mentioned, you get the bigger battery for $100,000, and even you go all the way up to the top trim, the RS. It's I have the numbers here. It's 140, which is less than the Taycan Turbo, much less than the Turbo S.
Way less.
Yeah, so they definitely made the price make sense in the line. If you're going to compare the 4 different Taycans with the 2 different or the 3 different GTs, there's a specific point for each one of them to fit in, and it all really works.
So
if you have a question for us, go ahead and drop it in the comments as well. We should be clear about the 0 to 60 times that we saw, because as Tom mentioned, there's a slight deviation when converting kilometers over. The standard e-tron GT, which by the way starts at $99,900, will do 0 to 60 in 3.9 seconds with that overboost function, and the upgraded RS model will do 0 to 60 in 3.1 seconds. If you ask me, I think both of those figures are underrated, and we'll find that out shortly when we get to drive this thing.
So I wanna echo what some of the commenters are saying and place the e-tron in the broader context of the segments, which definitely brings some eye-opening comparisons. Because of course, a week or two ago we had Tesla debut the refreshed version of the Model S, and obviously that's going to be a car that the Taycan has been compared to endlessly, and now the e-tron GT will as well. With the new Model S, that's a base price of $75,000 with a range of 412 miles and a 0 to 60 time of 3.1 seconds at its slowest. So this is where you get a lot of commenters asking, why can't other automakers catch Tesla? And it's a great question. I think there's a debate about range because even though they'll say the range of this is 238 miles, say, they're vastly underestimated. So I would say, Tom, in our testing, we've seen them regularly go 270 miles, which is great. That's a much better real world range to use. However, even at 270 miles, it's still far below a Model S in terms of range. And even in the performance specs, it's still below the Model S. What explanation do you have for the OEMs, not just Volkswagen with Porsche and Audi, but all of them really? Why can't they put out a car that matches the Tesla spec for spec, if not for price as well?
So I actually had conversations, believe it or not, with Lucid about this recently, because as well, you know, Lucid also has a very long range car that's going to be coming out in a couple of months, and I asked their CEO Peter Rawlinson, like, how come we don't see this from the traditional OEMs? How come they just can't seem? And you know, he bluntly said that, you know, the startups, Tesla, Lucid, some of the other ones, obsess over range and efficiency. It's what the core of their being is, to make these vehicles as efficient as possible. And with the entrenched OEMs, the legacy brands, it's just not part of their DNA, and it's hard to make that change. It's you know, there's layers of management that you have to go through, and it's one of the reasons why many people, many industry experts, think that the real groundbreaking technology with electrification these days is not going to come from legacy OEMs. Now, they could build great cars, and I think that this is a great car, but is there anything groundbreaking coming out of it, you know, that you see, like,
right? Does it push the envelope further?
Exactly. And I think that's what we're going to see industry wide. I think the startups, the Rivians, the Teslas, the Lucids, you're going to see the groundbreaking stuff come from them, and then the legacy brands are going to make something really good, but just come a little short on things like efficiency and range and in those aspects.
You know, I once heard it described like this, that a Tesla, like a Tesla Model 3, is a $40,000 battery attached to a $20,000 car. You know, that's how much emphasis they put on the drivetrain and the efficiency. And or I've heard it put like this: if you're an automaker and you have the 5 buckets that you're going to put resources into to make a car, and one is efficiency, one is performance, one is fit and finish, one is reliability, Tesla is putting 80% of its resources into the efficiency and only 5% into fit and finish, whereas traditional automakers put an equal amount in each bucket.
If not more. I mean, you get inside of a
yeah.
Taycan, it is, and I anticipate this as well. I'll put up an interior image in a second. This should be a well-built, beautiful vehicle. We shouldn't, I mean, somebody made a joke about panel gaps and things like that. And I really agree with this comment at the bottom here. It's a nice looking car, and it's sort of the bare minimum on range and performance. But I think that's underselling it a little bit. They're hitting those performance targets, the ones that they need to Tom's point. And then this is still a very good looking, very cool Audi. And as they make that transition to build more electric vehicles in that regard, that's an important thing. This couldn't be a giant dorkmobile with 4 rings on the front of it. This had to keep the same Audi brand presence, and I think they nailed that.
Yeah, it's about priorities that you put into a car when you're developing it. And legacy automakers tend to, you know, put more emphasis on some things than the drivetrains and the powertrains in terms of, at least with EVs. I think Tom's exactly right. These startups like Lucid, Rivian, and Tesla, specifically Tesla, because they're the only ones producing cars and have been doing so for, you know, coming up on a decade. They said we're going to have the highest range possible, the highest performance envelope possible, and everything else is going to be a slave to that, for better or worse. And that is absolutely fair to say about a Tesla, because certainly things are sacrificed in the pursuit of having the best engineering when it comes to their efficiency. So yeah, I mean, what camp? You got to ask yourself, what camp are you? Are you the part where you want kind of the best overall car experience, and you're willing to sacrifice that range and efficiency for it, and in some cases performance? Or do you want to be on the bleeding edge and have that thing that has pushed the envelope that much farther, recognizing that it's going to come with sacrifices in other areas?
Tom, a very simple question for you. You've proclaimed your love for the Taycan. I've driven it. It's one of my favorite cars I've driven last year. Noting the pretty considerable price difference between the fastest levels of Taycan and this car, did Audi do enough to get you to be a customer for them, or would you still opt for the Porsche equivalent?
Well, obviously, I'd like to drive this first, and you know, I expect it's going to have a different road feel, Clint. I think that, you know, this is going to feel more like the luxury car. And, you know, I used to own a Porsche Boxster years ago, and I still miss that car. So the Taycan kind of brings me back to that, like that Porsche driving experience. And I don't know if this will have it. That's part of why I love the Taycan so much. I would imagine it probably comes pretty close. You know, so it would actually be something I consider. Listen, I don't have money for either one of these cars, but you know, I'm certainly going to drive this, and hey, you know, give it a fair shake. I love the interior, the pictures we've seen so far. See, that's another thing. We talk a lot about Tesla and comparing. Even with the Tesla Model S refresh, which I love the new interior. It looks so much. It's one of the things I never liked about the Model S before was their interior. It looks so much better. You know, a lot of people are going to look at this and say, this is what I consider much more luxurious, or an upgrade over what Tesla offers. Now, some Tesla fans will differ from that. They like the minimalistic styling that Tesla has, but you know, this and the build quality, when you get in this, it's going to feel rock solid, more so than say a Tesla. As John said, Tesla puts so much of their money into the drivetrain. And also, one thing, John, we didn't mention is user interface. They also spend a ton of money making sure the user interface is top notch. And I think that's something that some of the legacy manufacturers are going to have to step up their game on, because they're not there yet.
Yeah, you know, it's funny you bring that up, because I just noticed looking at this interior picture, the e-Tron GT does not have the 4 screens up front that the Taycan has.
I was going to point that out as well.
It's a little bit more traditional, right? With just the main nav screen and then the gauge screen as well.
Right.
Which is fine. I almost think the 4 screens of the Taycan is a little overkill, but I haven't driven the Taycan, so you guys.
Well, in the latest versions of Audi products, RS6 Avant, things like that, there's a supplemental screen for the climate controls, and it works well and it looks nice, but I'm surprised that they actually got rid of it in this case, and I'm wondering if that's going to be the case for the next generation of facelifted Audis, because you would think with their EV, they want to put as much technology in it as possible.
But just like with the performance, they couldn't outshine the Taycan, so maybe they removed the other screens.
Well, I mean, they already have, you know, 2 displays, one for navigation in the main interface, and then one for climate controls in their normal car. So I don't think Porsche would have stepped in.
Well, I mean, Porsche does have a lower screen, right?
Yes, it does.
Yeah, so it could have.
It's interesting to see them go back to physical controls. You do see an updated version of virtual cockpit. You see paddles on the steering wheel, which always cracks me up in an electric vehicle, but I'm assuming that has to do with regen or some settings there, perhaps even the drive modes. Tom mentioned UI and Teslas. Obviously, that's fantastic and part of its selling point. I'll have Audi's back here, though, because their UI is some of my absolute favorites among mainstream automakers, especially this setup with the new app style with the wireless CarPlay. There's a sort of a tactile feedback you get in pressing the screen. I will say they are fingerprint monsters, and this looks like they have the same glass as some of the other Audis, but this is a great looking interior.
You know, I also want to bring up another point that a colleague of ours, Kyle, really demonstrated when he set the world record for doing the cannonball run across the US in an EV recently with the Taycan, which is that while the Taycan's range may not be as high as the Teslas, the Model S, let's say, because its charging hardware is so good and so fast, as long as there are chargers widely available, you can go farther in a day or 2 days or 3 days of driving, because you are spending so much less time at a high-speed charger. With its 800-volt architecture, it's up to 350 kilowatt charge speed. So that is, I think, a one place where the Taycan pushed the envelope for sure. Definitely made an advancement for all EVs when it did that, and it's great that the e-Tron has that too. The only problem is in the real world, it's not that easy to find 350 kilowatt chargers that are operational and working all over the place.
Let me quickly plug in our shameless plug for, we have 2 articles on motor1.com that just went up in the last half hour. We have the full debut article on the e-tron GT, which has a lot of the details we've already mentioned laid out. And we also have a great article comparing the e-tron GT to some of its closest rivals. So be sure to check out both of those over on the website. The one thing I will say is this car is starting at $99,900. And it sort of fits in, as far as I can tell, at least in terms of 0 to 60 and horsepower, between Taycan 4S and Taycan Turbo. So, some will note that the regular Taycan rear-wheel drive version just came out in the last few months, and that starts in the high 70s. So you wonder, will Audi sort of follow suit in that regard and do just a rear drive version or a cheaper version, because the 2 that we saw today are both all-wheel drive?
You know, that's a good question, because of course Audis are famous for all-wheel drive, although there are some Audis sold that aren't four-wheel drive or all-wheel drive, so that there is precedent for that if they wanted to do a rear-wheel drive only version. I think since they decided to do the Taycan with a kind of inexpensive or more inexpensive base model, that they will with the Audi as well. That's my guess, but it's pure speculation. I could see Audi just as easily saying, no, we're only going to sell the e-tron with Quattro, and that's it. So
let me ask you a question. I'm not as familiar with the Audi product line. The A7, is that rear-wheel drive or is that all-wheel drive? Because that's the lowest version. There's the A7, the S7, the RS7, right? That's the similar vehicle compared to the e-tron as far as size-wise with Audi.
I believe that's Quattro only. That's all-wheel drive only.
Okay.
A7 should be Quattro only, even at the base level. Audi's big on Quattro, but you can still get cars that are
a couple.
I mean, like a
front-wheel
Q3
drive.
comes with front-wheel drive.
Yeah, like
standard.
an A4 maybe. So it's rare, and it's usually a base model or something. But
I think they would follow that then. I you know, if there isn't a rear-wheel drive version, then I probably would say that they're not going to introduce.
Well, I think from an EV perspective, it gives them the opportunity to make a less expensive model. I mean, with the base Taycan now, some people, you know, California, Florida markets, they don't really care if the car is all-wheel drive. They might from a launching perspective, but for everyday drivability, they're okay with just a rear-wheel drive version. But like I said, this car, the base e-tron GT, fits in between Taycan 4S and Taycan Turbo from both a price and a horsepower perspective. And then RS E-Tron GT, which I should have been in those marketing circles to come up with a better name. But that is sandwiched in between Taycan Turbo and Taycan Turbo S.
Yeah, and like I said, the crossover point where you really have to where I think the Audi looks really good is at $100,000, because all of the e-trons get the larger battery pack, and a $100,000 Taycan is going to have the smaller battery pack. So you're going to get at $100,000, you're going to get more range, probably more standard equipment as well with the Audi.
Fast charging capability.
Yeah, with the Audi than with the Porsche. So I think at $100,000, it's a deal versus the Taycan. But again, you put it in a larger context, and then you have to talk about what are your priorities. Is your priority range? Is your priority performance? Is your priority a luxury car? And all of that comes with that, because the Tesla just comes in and ruins the curve, in so to speak, in that regard.
Does the design to you both look like they obviously started with the Taycan and then tried their damnedest to knock that out as best as possible?
To me, it does, and especially we're looking at that blue Audi there. I just had the blue Taycan for a week in my driveway, so I can't help but look at them and see the same thing. So yeah, I definitely see that more so than say an electric version of the A7. You know, it definitely, you can't hide it. That's the body, which is great because it's a beautiful shape, you know. And
nobody's saying it's an ugly car. It is not.
I love that front and how it stayed true to the concept. That is, you know, I have to get a picture of the concept and this right next to each other. But from what I can remember, that's what the concept looked like, you know. And so they did a nice job keeping the concept, staying true to the concept.
They shoved all of the driving aid tech down below, kind of nicely well hidden. Some cars we don't see that integrated as well. I think the charging bar looks damn identical to the Taycan, which is a dumb thing to complain about in an EV. But
and there's charging ports on both sides of the vehicle,
which is nice.
Yeah.
One thing I'll
only
say,
Audi and Porsche does.
With all of those sensors and cameras in the lower part of the front bumper, I wonder if they're going to pick up snow and get blocked a lot. That seems like a not great place for them in that regard. Also, when you to answer your question about does it look like it was a Taycan designed to be an Audi, if you look at the profile, I think if you hold your hands up and block everything on the other side of the wheels, so the front end and the back end, I think everything in between the wheels looks exactly like a Taycan.
Right.
Like the shape of the roof and the doors look, I mean, I couldn't distinguish them if you hid the front and rear parts.
So John, really quick, you mentioned about will it get blocked by snow? As you know, I had the Taycan 4S last week, and we got 3 feet of snow here in New Jersey, and that happened to me while I was driving. I got the warnings that snow is blocking the system. Yeah, so it's going to happen.
Because even if you look at Teslas and they have their sensors kind of high above the belt line and behind glass, those won't get blocked by snow usually, but if you're driving and it's sunny out and the sun is shining directly into one of the Tesla's cameras, that camera won't work. So, I mean, there's only so much you can do to keep the cameras and sensors clean. But yeah, putting them that low seems like you're asking for them to get clogged up with either snow or something else.
Let me ask final thoughts from each of you on this car and what you're most excited about. Tom, let's start with you.
So I'm most excited the fact that to me, it's a more luxurious version of the Taycan for Audi loyalists. You know, you're going to be there's a lot of brand loyalty. The people that, you know, they're on their 10th Audi every 2 or 3 years, they lease a new one. They wouldn't even consider a Taycan. This is going to get them into a high performance, all electric Audi. And they're going to be able to experience, you know, the thrilling driving experience of electric vehicles. And I applaud Audi for doing this. Although I'll just, one last comment is, the real Audi that I am looking forward to in 2021 is the E-Tron Q4, because that's the affordable all-electric Audi. It's coming in at about $45,000. That's the one that they can sell to the masses. While I love this, it's still a vehicle that's out of the reach from the common man.
Mr. Neff.
Well, you know, I was a little more excited for this until Tom brought up that point about, like, does it move the ball forward? And from that perspective, it doesn't. I mean, anything that the Taycan moved the ball forward with maybe the charging architecture, and so the Audi doesn't really get to debut anything new at all. That said, I love the design. I would happily drive this thing even over a Taycan because I think it's gorgeous. I don't mind that it doesn't have the screens or might be a tick slower. I actually prefer luxury over performance, so I can see myself enjoying this more. But I also agree with Tom. Like, okay, you have your Halo EV, but how are you going to start spreading electrification throughout your lineup at scale and at volume? And when you start doing that, can you compete with the startups? You know, and Tesla's the only one for now, but it won't be the only one for long. I mean, Tesla's not going to be everybody's punching bag forever by itself. You're going to have Rivian, and you're going to have Lucid, and you're going to have others like Fisker, who's going to come out with a crossover as well. And I completely agree. Like, these OEMs have to compete. And honestly, if I were to make a comparison, I think the Ford Mustang Mach-E has done a better job of pushing a legacy automaker out of its comfort zone in terms of developing an EV than the Taycan and the E-Tron have done for Volkswagen. The Mach-E has really gone after Tesla and gotten very close to matching it in many respects. Whereas the E-Tron and the Taycan, you know, they go up against the Model S or the Model 3. They win in the obvious areas, but they don't win in the areas that I think people who buy EVs are looking at and prioritizing most. So,
well, there we go. Lots of information today, an exciting debut. from the 2022 Audi E-Tron GT. For everything you need to know about this car, including it's stacked up against its competition, go ahead and go over to motor1.com, where we have 2 full articles for you to read there. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed this video. We'll be doing more of these panel-style discussions as live streams continue in the future, and we have weekly content that goes up as well. To my very distinguished panel guests, thank you both for joining me today, and I look forward to the next one.
You're welcome. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, everybody, for joining us. Bye-bye.
Thanks for having